Joining us right now is John Hagan, who is an attorney out of the UK specializing in gaming. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
So, the Labour Party already announced goals to enforce stricter regulations on gaming there in the UK. How is that impacting the general election, and how much is politics getting involved in what's going on there right now?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that we can expect an election pretty soon. It was supposed to be in 2022, but with Brexit and everything, I think we can expect an election very soon, probably later this year. Is stricter gambling regulation going to have any impact on the outcome of that election? No, it's all about Brexit. But to understand the environment that the industry is working in at the moment, they are operating in a white-hot cauldron of political, media, regulatory pressure. And it's all about raising standards when it comes to anti-money laundering and responsible gambling. And they are really expecting the industry to up its game to provide an ever safer, more enjoyable gambling environment. So how is the industry responding to this? How is it responding to what Labour has to say? Well, we've been advising in the gambling sector for 20 years, and it's all changed. There's been a seismic change in culture within gambling operators. Even in the last 4 or 5 years, they're really putting responsible gambling at the top of their agenda. And so we're seeing all sorts of voluntary initiatives. We're seeing them introduce a ban on gambling advertising during sporting events, during the watershed when children are watching. We're seeing something called GamStop, which allows you to press a button and exclude yourself from almost every online gambling site in the country. We're seeing investment in algorithms which will identify from your patterns of gambling whether you're engaged in harmful activity, and then the operator is expected to interact with that customer. So how are they responding to Labour's proposals? The reality is that the opposition's agenda is already part of the debate. So a lot of the things that Labour want to see already being addressed by the Gambling Commission.
Is it a problem in the UK? I mean, is it a big issue?
It's an enormous issue. And in the UK at the moment, they would conservatively estimate that CEOs of leading gambling companies are spending 25-30% of their time dealing with responsible gambling issues. I mean, can you imagine if that was the case here? And what I would like, and I'm sure we'll come on to, is I don't want the US ever to be in that position where the CEO of all the leading companies are spending their time in a defensive mode rather than going out and, making their products more enjoyable for their customers.
So what can the US learn from the mistakes or even the wins of what the UK has done in the gaming industry?
They need to get ahead of the curve. So it's incumbent on the industry to be identifying areas of potential problems and addressing them before anybody else is even thinking about them. And, here we are in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's different here because people come here maybe once a year or more, but they come here on a trip. So they're gambling. Is there a way they're not surrounded by the opportunity to gamble, depending on where they come from. But we're looking at the emergence of online gambling here in the States, and it's going to go to a lot of states that previously haven't had big gambling industries. And they're going to be looking at the fact that their customers can gamble on their phones, can gamble in front of their TVs, can gamble when they've been drinking. And they're going to be asked by the anti-gambling lobby in each jurisdiction, what are you doing to protect? And they need to have the answers ready, and they need to be ahead of the game and not find themselves. They need to make responsible gambling such an integrated part of their product that it's almost indistinguishable, that it's not a separate topic by itself. Responsibility towards their customers is just second nature to them.
Right. So how do you protect the most vulnerable customers? How do you protect that segment of the population?
What is very interesting is that at one end of the spectrum, maybe the 1% that are experiencing problems with their gambling, despite what it might look like to you or I, they almost certainly don't see themselves as a problem gambler. They don't recognize it, much like an alcoholic will not see that they have a problem right until the last moment. And all of those people that are problem gamblers are people who at some point thought that they didn't have a problem with their gambling. So industry needs to be creative in its messaging, in how it raises awareness of what responsible gambling means. In the UK, you're expected to provide tools in an online environment, for example, that when I register for a company, I can set a limit on what's the maximum amount I want to spend in a month, what's the maximum amount of time I want to spend. It's a bit like putting a safety belt on when you're driving a car, just part of the everyday experience. And then at the severe end, the industry needs to be, as a minimum, paying for the treatment and counseling of those that are experiencing problems.
I think it's interesting about you is like you do all this legal work, in the UK for the gaming industry, but you also are the deputy chairman for Game Care. Am I saying that right?
Yes,
Game
Game
Care,
Care.
which is a nonprofit to support problem gambling. How'd you get involved in that?
Well, I've been on the board of Game Care for about 12 years now, and they do wonderful work. They do wonderful work at the severe end of problem gambling, and they really have amazing results in treating people. They provide a free counselling service, which is all indirectly and independently funded by the industry, and they do a wonderful thing, and I've always been very supportive of their work. And on a personal level, I've always been slightly curious about what is it about me and the other 99% of customers that can go to a gambling venue and enjoy their gambling and really have a fun time and experiencing all the innovative and fantastic products and walk away when I'm in danger of spending too much or doing myself harm. And what is it that makes me different from that smaller percentage of people?
Yeah.
And I've always been curious in that. And I've also been curious, coming back to my earlier point, about feeding the knowledge that you learn at the sharp end where people have already reached rock bottom. How do you feed that knowledge back to those that are maybe somewhere along that journey and ensure that operators behave in a way that can maybe interact with customers before they reach the stage where they're having serious problems?
Yeah, no, get that. I totally get that. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything else you want to tell me?
I don't think so.
You enjoying yourself here?
I'm really enjoying myself. Personally, I love gambling, and I'm dividing my time between the show and dinners and doing my emails and a little bit of time on the tables.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.